The question for today, it's a little bit of a tough one. Let's see. I enjoyed the California class. Let's see. Forgot to ask how a person would be able to learn how to shoot pairs or do the doubles drill if the public ranges do not allow rapid fire. Mentioned in class today that in my area, outdoor and indoor public ranges do not even allow moving and shooting, so I wouldn't be able to practice entering, exiting, kind of moving around while shooting. I would only be able to do shooting and moving at a match or a practice day, which apparently some clubs there do that. I was in California for 5, 6 days. So anyway, it sounds like they do like practice days where you could rent a bay or sign up, and then practice on a stage with some other people. But makes up the point. It's not the same as just practicing on his own. So he knows he needs to continue to work on marksmanship fundamentals, but with the lack of ranges or facilities that allow stages or shooting on the move, see some value in doing local matches. Anyway, thanks for the thoughts and advice. So, there's quite a few things to talk about. I think the biggest thing to impress upon you is the need to connect live fire and dry fire as much as you possibly can. Easier said than done. So, some ways to make your dry fire feel as close as you can to live fire. Like wrong ways or things people commonly fall into is kind of working on draws or mag changes, the gun handling stuff, or draw to first shot, really whip the gun fast out of the holster, but not really building the habit where you have the right pressures or connect to the gun. So then in live ammo, when you go to shoot, the gun flips around a lot more than you realize. Oh, okay. And then you adjust your grip to clamp down on it. So if you aren't able to do live fire practice, that makes dry fire practice even more important. Important to, when I hold the gun and connect to it, having just the same pressures I would if I was firing live ammo. So firing hand, just connected to the gun in a way that if I move the gun around, it's not going to slip. Support hand, same thing. Grip the gun firmly enough that when it recoils, like the top of my support hand index finger doesn't separate from the trigger guard. Or when I'm shooting a bunch of rapid fire, my support hand doesn't slip down on the gun. The next thing you know, I have kind of a compromised grip. So the way to build your habits is going to be in dry fire, and it's going to be tougher to test things in live fire. For all the movement stuff, if you have, well, this varies a little bit depending on area of the country you live in, but maybe it's a backyard, a basement, if that's a thing where you're at, if you have a garage, whatever. Wherever your dry fire area is, you can set up all the movement, everything, the target tracking components of shooting while moving, the movement stuff for feet spread apart, knees bent, and simulate shooting some targets in dry fire, move to another spot, shoot some stuff, have your gun up for position entry and exit, all that kind of stuff. You can work on that stuff in dry fire, but the one thing you really need to practice is going to be your grip that you need ammo for or to at least test, and that you could do on a static range as long as they allow rapid fire. So, here's my hot take. In dry fire, you work on doing all that stuff and trying to ingrain the right grip pressures you want on the gun. And in dry fire, I recommend doing both techniques where sometimes I'm just aiming. So I'm observing the way the sight moves between the target. Does it go right there? Do I think I'm kind of staring at the sight? Oh, dang it, I was that time. Then I look and the sight goes. All that kind of stuff. So work on that piece in dry fire. Work on the grip, trying to connect to it in a way that my the gun doesn't move around inside my hands, but I'm not using too much firing hand tension that I can't press the trigger. And then again, I'm just assessing where the sight goes, and I'm trying to do everything else the same way I would if I was live firing ammo. The other component to that is pressing the trigger in dry fire. So if I do that, I want to press the trigger. Well, so the gun's cocked right now. It's an M&P. If I'm pressing the trigger like this in dry fire, which isn't even hard enough to drop the striker in dry fire, it's definitely going to be a no-go for live fire. An example, I happen to have the John McClane special here next to me. So if I was in dry fire, work on my trigger press for this one, if I was doing one of these little numbers, this really isn't accomplishing much of anything because I'm not actually pressing the trigger hard enough that the gun would fire if I was shooting live ammo. You will notice there's a big difference between just tapping the trigger or maybe tapping enough just the trigger moves a little bit compared to actually pressing the trigger hard enough that you'd fire a shot. Sometimes people get sympathetic movement. Sorry for all the noise if this is noisy. Whereas like my finger or my thumb move together, or maybe when I'm pressing the trigger, you see like the part of my firing hand clamps down or it shifts or moves. So that's the part you'd really want to key in on. So you work on sight picture, like moving and doing all the dynamic stuff, just a sight picture, moving and doing all the dynamic stuff with pressing into the trigger, just like you're shooting live ammo. For, I should explain. For DASA bros, double action, single action, what I'd recommend is press the trigger all the way for a double action pull, release the trigger enough that this would be firing a single action pull after that, but not releasing it so far that I'm doing double action the whole time. I don't think that's super helpful, but a word of caution, if I just do this much pressure, that's not going to be enough to get you there either. So the trigger has to be released far enough that it would be resetting the gun if I was shooting a single action shot. And you can hopefully tell I'm pushing into this trigger probably twice as hard as I need to actually fire the gun. So that puts me in a spot where I'm trying to like not move my thumbs. I'm pressing in the trigger twice as hard as I would to fire live ammo. So trying to build that within my grip. So anyway, that's the magic, is trying to do as much as you can to connect dry fire and live fire. Like for this person where you can't practice a lot, doing all the movement stuff in dry fire is very important. Then we go to a static range with a bucket of ammo or whatever your ammo is. Working on marksmanship fundamentals, so I really like the doubles drill, those fast pairs, the reactive shooting at distance, picking which sight picture you're going to react to, working on that stuff, testing your grip, kind of connecting. When I get there and I bring it up to eye line and start pressing the trigger, do I have the right pressures that I thought I was going to have? It turns out I'm not actually holding on to the gun very hard, all that kind of stuff. And then you just work on kind of connecting the dots as best you can. So then you go back to dry fire after a range trip and realized you have too much firing hand tension, you've been pushing into the gun, you weren't pressing the trigger as hard as you should have been to fire the gun in live fire. Or maybe it's going pretty well and you just continue doing what you're doing. But that's going to be kind of the play. It's just going back and forth. Then when you get to a match, you're doing your best just to do what you've trained to do in dry fire. So, of course, having the gun recoil makes it a little bit different, but you're doing the best you can. So the one part you really, really do need ammo, though, for is your grip. I'm not saying you can't work on it in dry fire, but it has to be checked with live fire. So for that, go to the range, shoot some ammo. Like the one-shot return's another real banger where the gun's aimed at the target, you press the trigger and just observe how much input you need to put on the gun to return it back to where you're looking. Fire the fast pairs, do the reactive shooting, kind of get the best handle, so to speak, pun on words or play on words, with your grip as you can. And then when you go to the match, you're just kind of going to observe what happens, what doesn't happen, what you wish was different. Take that stuff back to dry fire and keep working on it. So hopefully it's helpful. Gives you some things to think about. If you have any other questions for me, drop it below. I do my best to read through the comments and answer those the comments with either just a simple sentence, if able, or if it's something like this that, I'm not going to lie, I'm way too lazy to type out that much. Then I'll just record a video and talk about it. So appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that crap, I guess. And have a good day.